Did you know there are 8 basic types of Celtic knot, from which nearly all Celtic knot patterns can be derived? The first knot is based on a 3-cord braid with horizontal breaks on one side. The second is based on a 3-cord braid with horizontal breaks on both sides. The third is based on a 4-cord braid with breaks in the middle. Number 4 is like number 3, but with an additional break. 5 is also like 3, but with 2 additional breaks. The 6th type of Celtic knot is also based on a 4-cord braid with breaks in the middle. It's like 3, but cut in half essentially. 7 is like 6, but with an additional break. And 8 is also based on 6, but with 2 additional breaks. So there you have it. The 8 elementary knots which, quote, form the basis of nearly all the interlaced patterns in Celtic decorative art. End quote. This, according to J. Romilly Allen, the archaeologist and historian of early British medieval iconography, whom you might remember from my video on the Great Celtic Paganism Hoax. Now, you can take these 8 knots and arrange them in rows or columns. You can add pointed ends to the loops. You can combine them with circular rings or enclose them in circular bands. And you can also distort them so they become triangular, thus forming what's known as triangular knotwork, which was especially popular in the Celtic Christian art of Ireland and Britain. And if you look closely at this triangular knotwork, you might see a symbol you recognize, perhaps from a Led Zeppelin album, or from Thor's hammer Mjolnir, or from the TV show Charmed, or from Michonne's katana on The Walking Dead. The list goes on. This is a triquetra, or triquetra in Latin, also known as the Irish Trinity knot or the Celtic Trinity knot. And while the symbol is used by modern Christians to represent the Trinity, and by Celtic neo-pagans to represent triple goddesses like the Morrigan, as well as other tricipital concepts like the tripartite division of the world into land, sea, and sky, the symbol itself predates those applications. Granted, the triquetra's original meaning remains murky. We'll get into it, but first, here's something we know for sure. The triquetra is the simplest knot possible. At its core, it's a trefoil knot, which is just your basic overhand knot with the 2 loose ends joined together. It's so simple, in fact, that I figured out how to draw one. Here's how you do it. Step 1. Draw an equilateral triangle with sides that curve slightly outwards. FYI, this is known as a rouleau triangle. Step 2. Leaving a little bit of space, draw 3 lines outside of that triangle, making sure they're the same length as and parallel to the rouleau triangle's curved sides. Step 3. Let those 3 lines serve as the bases of 3 isosceles triangles, but again, we want to curve those sides. The finished shapes should look like leaves or spearheads. Step 4. Here's where things get a little bit tricky. Draw a short line connecting one side of the center triangle to one side of one of the outer triangles. Step 5. Starting at the base of the adjacent outer triangle, draw a line parallel to the one you just drew, but continue it all the way around the tip of the outer triangle you were working on in the previous step. Continue down the other side, making sure to stop at the base. We can now see how this chord of the knot we just drew is on top of another chord, which means the next chord will need to go underneath. And yes, technically it's all one chord, but you know what I mean. Step 6. You're now going to repeat steps 4 and 5, connecting one side of the center triangle to the side of an outer triangle. And then you're going to add a parallel line and continue it all the way around. Make sure to keep the widths of the resulting chords consistent so that they all line up. Step 7. Go ahead and repeat steps 4 and 5 again, keeping in mind that since the previous chord went underneath, the next one will need to go over. One trick for helping you with the orientation of the chords is to think of a boat propeller. Each time you're adding one of those connector lines from the center triangle, it's like you're adding a propeller blade. The end result? Your very own triquetra. Keep in mind, this is how I figured out how to draw triquetras. It is by no means the only way to draw them or how people drew them historically. And speaking of the history of triquetras, the very first ones didn't look like this. As architect John Burleigh Waring explained in his 1874 book, Ceramic Art in Remote Ages, a rudimentary form of the triquetra can perhaps be gleaned in this Assyrian engraving of a, quote, tri-curved figure positioned over a pair of winged human-headed lions. To quote Waring, according to custom and analogy, the symbol over their heads would represent the sun. End quote. Then we have some coins from Lycia with a, quote, modification of the same figure, possibly influenced by Persian or Assyrian models after the conquest of the country by Cyrus's general Harpagus, as described by Herodotus around 540 BC. End quote. You can definitely see more of the modern triquetra in these symbols, and again the consensus is that they were intended to represent the sun, i.e. the, quote, solar flame. Except in the case of the coin with the dolphin jumping over the symbol. According to Waring, such a pairing leaves little doubt that, quote, in this instance at least, it represents water. End quote. All this being said, the 4-rayed figure, or filfot, was more popular and older than its 3-rayed counterpart, with the latter only, quote, becoming common and constant about the time of Alexander. End quote. Specifically post 333 BCE, which is when Alexander conquered Lycia en route to Persia. It was also in the 300s BCE when a variation of the triquetra, with 3 legs replacing the 3 rays, began being stamped on Sicilian coins. Known as a triskeles or trinacria, literally 3 capes, the symbol represented the triquetrous nature of Sicily's geography. Now, if you've been wondering when the heck I'm going to tie all of this back to Celtic knots, sorry, had to. The answer is soon. Very soon. Because as some of you have no doubt already realized, the 3-legged triskeles is also a symbol of the Isle of Man, one of the so-called modern Celtic nations. Starting in the 5th century CE, Gaelic/Goidelic Celtic speakers, i.e. Gaels from Ireland, began settling en masse on the island, spreading their language and culture, as well as the Christian message of a fella by the name of Patrick. So, did the Irish Gaels bring triskeles with them to the Isle of Man? Because certainly similar symbols were prevalent in Ireland before then. Way before then, it turns out. Indeed, one of the oldest examples of a triskelion, or triple spiral, dating back to 3200 BCE, can be found engraved on a stone at Newgrange, a monument I featured in an earlier video on megalithic structures. That symbol was created in the Neolithic era, about 2500 years before the arrival of the Celts. And just so we're all on the same page here, nomenclature-wise, technically triskele and triskelion can both refer to any symbol that A, exhibits rotational symmetry, i.e. it looks the same after you turn it a bit, and B, has 3 parts or patterns emanating from a common center. But for whatever reason, triskelion is now frequently used to refer specifically to triskeles that feature triple spirals. A triquetra, meanwhile, has traditionally meant the same thing as a triskele, with archaeologist and philologist George Stevens suggesting back in 1866 that triquetra is merely the vulgar or common term for a triskele. But these days when folks talk about triquetras, they are almost always referring to the trefoil knot design. Semantics aside, symbols that are similar to the Neolithic era triple spirals or tri-spirals of ancient Ireland were also created in ancient Malta and in Mycenaean Greece. So while the claim has been made that the presence of triskelions on Neolithic monuments that were built on what would become Celtic territories is proof that the Celts showed up thousands of years earlier than previously thought, that claim is lacking in substance. But that's not to say the Celts didn't love their spirals. Starting with the Iron Age La Tène culture, which would arrive in Britain and Ireland around 400 BCE, spirals and interlace became defining characteristics of early Celtic art, helping to pave the way for the more intricate knotwork of the later Christian era. Look no further than the Welsh island of Anglesey for one of the region's largest collections of metalwork done in the La Tène style, with artifacts, including some bearing triskeles, having accumulated there between 300 BCE and 100 CE. But despite the presence of Celtic triskelions in and around Britain, Ireland, and the Isle of Man, some scholars argue that the latter's leggy logo has more in common with Norse designs, like this triquetra/triskele discovered in Denmark that consists of 3 interlaced horns, which, according to the aforementioned George Stevens, is, quote, doubtless the mark of Thor. End quote. Given the Isle of Man was under Norse control for hundreds of years, it's not an unreasonable hypothesis. Of course, there's also the hypothesis that the design was lifted directly from the Sicilians following the King of Norway's ceding of the Isle of Man to the King of Scotland in 1266, because the King of Scotland's wife's brother, who was the second surviving son of the King of England, had recently been styled the King of Sicily by the Pope. Don't you just love history? Anyway, I'd be remiss not to mention that the Celtiberians were also fans of the 3-legged triskele, stamping the symbol on some of their coins. And just like the Sicilian version, the Celtiberian version has a face in the middle. Was this an independent creation, or was it perhaps the result of Roman influence? I don't actually know, I'm asking you. But my broader point is this, and yes, there's a reason I've been going down this whole Triskele-Triskelion-Triquetra rabbit hole. As a design category, Celtic knot is a bit of a misnomer. Yes, it's a useful and widespread term, but it doesn't really capture the, oh god, I'm gonna do it again, interwovenness of the different cultures that went into the art form. Case in point, while I've often thought of the triquetra as the quintessential Celtic knot, the knot you're looking at right now isn't Celtic. It's Scandinavian. And this knot right here looks pretty Celtic, right? That's a detail from a Saxon tomb. And these 2 knots? They're Roman. One's from Wales, the other England. And if you're tempted to say, well, the Romans just lifted that knot design from the Brittonic/Brythonic speaking Celts, i.e. the Britons, here's another example of that same knot. This one from Roman Algeria. Side note, if you want to take a closer look at these reference materials, check out the description below where, like always, I've included a link to the text version of this essay where all of my sources are cited and linked. Ultimately, what most of us think of as Celtic knotwork, myself included up until a few days ago, could more accurately be described as hiberno-saxon knotwork, or insular knotwork. For those unfamiliar with those terms, hiberno is a reference to the classical Latin name for Ireland, Hibernia. The Saxons were a Germanic people who began settling in large numbers in post-Roman Britain, and insular is derived from the Latin for island and is a reference to the islands of Ireland and Britain combined. But even those terms fail to account for the Mediterranean and other influences that are present in the art, but I guess the fact that said terms are rendered in Latin will have to do. Perhaps the best known examples of hiberno-saxon, aka insular knotwork, can be found in the Book of Kells, an illuminated manuscript crafted circa 800 CE. And if you haven't seen the animated feature The Secret of Kells about its creation, do yourself a favor and pause this video right now and go watch it. Other early sources of insular knotwork include the Gospels of MacRegal, also produced around 800 CE, the Lindisfarne Gospels, produced between 715 and 720 CE, and the Book of Durrow, produced circa 700 CE. Many of the high crosses, aka standing crosses, scattered across Ireland, Britain, and the Isle of Man showcase the same style of knotwork, which makes sense given that they were created around the same time as the aforementioned illuminated manuscripts. And interestingly, one of the oldest high crosses, if not the oldest, the Ruthwell Cross, which is now in Scotland, was erected in the early 700s when the territory was part of the Anglo-Saxon Kingdom of Northumbria. And guess who converted that Anglo-Saxon kingdom to Christianity prior to the cross's construction? Irish missionaries. This again highlights the cross-pollination, I'm the worst, happening between different cultures. Because if you look at the Celtic stone monuments being created in Ireland just a few hundred years before in the pre-Christian era, like the Tyrone stone in County Galway, dated to between 100 BCE and 100 CE, you might notice a discernible lack of knots. Yes, we've got curvilinear designs typical of the Latin style, but they're a far cry from the quote-unquote quote-unquote Celtic knots we're all familiar with today. To clarify, my point here isn't to belittle the artistic contributions of the Celts, it's to put those contributions into the broader multicultural context to which they belong. Part of what I'm doing with this channel is attempting to demystify Celtic culture and Celtic mythology, to show where Celtic ends and where Irish begins, and to show how those two identities are intertwined. If that's a journey you're interested in going on, I encourage you to subscribe to the Irish Myths channel. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and comment and help get the conversation going. My previous video on Celtic paganism has certainly gotten people talking. If you're in the mood for a good story, check out my Irish Myths Storytime podcast, available here as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're the rare soul who still likes to read books, bless you my child, I've got a few linked below that you might be interested in, including Irish Monsters in Your Pocket, a tiny little book about Irish dragons, werewolves, vampires, banshees, headless horsemen, and other beastly beings. As always, my name is I.E. Kneverday, editor of the short story anthology Neon Druid, and creator of IrishMyths.com. Thanks for coming out. The sixth type of Celtic knot. The sixth type of